in the opening, I would like to thank you for your presence, and I want to invite you to participate in the cybersecurity conference organized in an innovative format by the Maritime University of Constanta and the Institute for Cyber Policy Studies with the support of the Integrated Security, Defense and Intelligence Services think tank. Our university wants to ensure an educational and research environment conducive to the development of collaborations in the field of cybersecurity, especially maritime cybersecurity, today's conference being a starting point for a series of monthly events. Also, today we intend to launch a gallery of cybersecurity technologies and services useful to academic environment, but also to all those who want to be informed. Every month, we want to introduce the new technologies, services, and portfolios to experts in order to build an active hub in the field of cybersecurity. In fact, you already see the address on the background. Today, we have guests with very important experience. Our keynote speakers, Amir Saji, Minister Counselor, Coordinator for Cybersecurity Affairs, Strategic Affairs Division of the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs. His Excellency has an extensive experience in the field and in diplomacy, in the field of cybersecurity and in diplomacy, of which we list only a few. Deputy Director of the Internet and Information Department in the Public Diplomacy Division, Deputy Ambassador at the Israeli Embassy in Lisbon, Deputy Director of the Arms Control and Disarmament Policy Department Strategic Divisions, Senior Diplomatic Advisor and Chief of Staff to the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. The area of advanced technology will be represented today by Mr. Radu Stănescu, as CEO of Sandline, who will be present the Centralizer technology. Beyond Sandline managerial position, he has an extensive experience as a cybersecurity consultant with over 15 years of experience in penetration testing, focused on risk vulnerability management and human vulnerability. The presentation will be hosted and moderated by Dr. Nicu Iancu. He has worked in the field of international military cooperation and strategic planning, having a relevant expertise on NATO, multinational operations, integrated planning, and public policies in the security, defense, and intelligence areas. He has over 20 years of experience in the field of defense and security research and intelligence and security higher education. He was director of the Mihai Viteazul National Intelligence Academy. Today, Nicu Iancu is the President of Integrated Intelligence, Defense and Security Solutions, Vice Chairman of the Advisory Board of the InSource Development Group. I'm deeply convinced that the launch of this series of events will lay the foundation for a long-term and successful collaboration as an obvious academic advantage. A collaboration not only between today's maritime organizations, but also Side Bureau, also Integrated Intelligence, Defense and Security Solution, but with the further participations of other organizations, collaborators, and friends. I will give now the stage to Dr. Tal Pavel, founder and director of a great organization, really great organization, the Institute for Cyber Policy Studies, a great cybersecurity expert with a major expertise and creative energy. Tal, please, you have the stage.
Thank you very much, Professor Raicu. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, guests, participants, and attendees. The cyberspace, as well as every new technology, brings a lot of advantages and opportunities, along with challenges and risks for every citizen, business, society, and nation around the globe and across all industries. The maritime sector, as a critical infrastructure, is an important pillar in almost every country's economy and therefore vulnerable to security and cybersecurity threats. Threats that already been happened and realized by a wide range of cyber attacks against seaport vessels, operation technology, and information technology, either by cybercriminals and nation-state actors. Those emphasize the need to enhance cybersecurity in the maritime sector. In addition, the year 2020 posed a wide range of changes, challenges, and even threats due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic that spread around the world since the beginning of 2020 has shaken the human existence and left its mark on the humanity from one end of the world to the other, while creating shockwaves on many and varied fields, including an unprecedented increase in cyber incidents directly associated with the pandemic. This era demonstrated the effects of global changes and challenges to every individual, society, corporate, and country, as well as the need to join forces to mitigate such challenges. In the same regard, the cyberspace, its challenges and threats that happen day by day and affects each of us. Therefore, we need to work together for mitigating such threats, to share knowledge and ideas, and to learn from each other's experience, especially with regional interests. This is the essence of this conference. I'd like to thank our moderator, Mr. Nicu Iancu, the speakers, Mr. Amir Saghi and Mr. Radu Stănescu, and my partner for the organizing of the event, Professor Gabriel Raicu, the Vice Rector for Innovation and Research at the Constanta Maritime University, Romania. I welcome and greet you at the beginning of our event, Cybersecurity and the Maritime Sector. Thank you for joining us. May this event be valuable and fruitful to you. I wish you all the good wishes, and especially those days, all the good health. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this great pleasure that you gave me to be here today. Actually, I'm excited to moderate the first edition of the Cybersecurity and the Maritime Sector Events series. It is why, first of all, I want to congratulate Constanta Maritime University for this outstanding initiative, especially Professor Gabriel Raicu, Vice Rector for Research and Head of the Center of Excellence in Maritime Cybersecurity. Also, I want to thank Mr. Tal Pavel for contributing to this event. I think that this initiative will bring a new perspective on maritime cybersecurity in this context in which the cyber world evolves very much. And I think that we will start today as Mr. Amir Saghi is not still here, with Mr. Radu Stănescu. Good morning, Mr. Radu Stănescu, and thank you very much for joining us for today's session, the first session of the Cybersecurity and the Maritime Sector Events series. I would start today's session by setting a little bit the scene from a very broad perspective. By noticing that the state and non-state actors are growing more sophisticated and accomplishing advancements in policy, education, and technologies in cyberspace. In this era, policymakers and tech experts must still understand the underlying factors and evolutions impacting the field of cybersecurity. But sometimes cybersecurity strategists and professionals tend to devote too much attention to particular cybersecurity events rather than focusing on strategy and foresight to understand better significant global trends. More and more relevant voices assert that a sound cybersecurity approach needs a comprehensive effort standing on integrated methods, integrated capabilities, and very sound tools and methodologies to be implemented in this field. The existence of high-capable private sector actors focused on cybersecurity can benefit states, mainly since private and public sectors often use the same technologies. More broadly, many companies are direct providers of cybersecurity services to governments. States may have implicit access to, though not control over companies' data. This is particularly plausible for democracies with robust private sectors, and perhaps less so in authoritarian countries that exert greater control. Anyway, in this context, Mr. Radu Stănescu, do you think that there is enough trust between state and non-state actors to facilitate the actual merging of cybersecurity capabilities across the private and public sectors in urgent states of cyber emergencies? How can they act consciously together in such circumstances, both the state and private sector?
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Iancu. It's a nice pleasure to see you, plenty of friends back again in a cybersecurity conference. Thanks, Gabriel, for the very wide introduction and very interesting. And I will have to put my second hat now to reply to Mr. Iancu's question, is that I am part of the ECCC board from Romania part, and the ECCC Center, which is the European Cybersecurity Competence and Research and Development Center, which is hosted in Romania. It's the first agency that we were able to host in Romania, and I'm very glad it's on cybersecurity. One of the most emphasized objectives of the center is to facilitate the dual usage of technology, the military, or let's say the state dedicated technology with the private sector, because both have their own advantages. Some have, let's say, a more involvement in the research and dedicated development of particular technologies, but more and more we're seeing essential operators, which becomes critical infrastructure for a country, which are operated by private sector. So in that case, definitely targeting them will be a national security issue. So in this case, yeah, Europe is doing some steps ahead and try to facilitate this private public partnership, hoping to increase the overall cybersecurity and to tackle such let's say state sponsored or not state sponsored, but definitely which are targeting critical infrastructure and sensitive infrastructure of country.
So, Mr. Stănescu, as you've mentioned, only if you take the whole ecosystem, you can come out with something that enables you to compete in the cyber world. And Romania is present on the international cybersecurity map with many developments, many initiatives and events in the field. There are many reasons to believe that our country has become a significant source of expertise and talent in cybersecurity. For instance, as you've mentioned, the Bucharest-based Cybersecurity Competence Center got the green light from the European Council. This center will bring together the main European stakeholders, including industry, academic and research organizations, and other relevant civil society associations to form a cybersecurity competence community to enhance and spread cybersecurity expertise across the European Union and maybe, why not, abroad. How do you see these accomplishments, Mr. Stănescu? How do you see Romania's presence in the cybersecurity world?
Well, we are in a very interesting position, speaking geographically. That was one of the, let's say, essential characteristics that we mentioned when we bidded as country for the center to be in Romania, and we said, look, we are part of European Union. At the same time, we have a very strong relationship with the United States. We have NATO bases on our country. We have the vessel. We have some very good relations on security and cybersecurity, also with European Union, also with the United States. And we are also in a very interesting geographical zones towards, let's say, some of other actors, let's call them, not pointing fingers, but some other actors which we know they are very active in the cybersecurity, let's say, more dark zone of it. And it's also a matter of, I always said that cybersecurity starts with the person, with the first cyber system, which it was actually a Romanian which defined the first cyber system. And it was Stefano Dobleja, which defined the reaction of the law of feedback, which is the base of the cyber system, right? So that's why he said, look, the human is the first person. That's why I'm saying that having this localization in Romania, we have our past. We all know it. It's not something that we need to deny it, and we can get the benefits of it, and we can understand the phenomenon of fake news. When we're speaking, let's say, 10 years about fake news under other terms, the more common terms back then, it was disinformation, because it was closer to the source of that term. The Western part of Europe were looking at us and they say, yeah, what are you speaking about? There is no such thing. We can have public news, we can have fact checking and all that. And then they saw it. So it's Romania has a huge, can bring a huge benefit to the community of cybersecurity. Now, speaking of coming back to the center, and one of the tasks is to build local communities through the national center. So basically, we have the European center, which is hosted in Bucharest, but in each country there will be their national center. And there is also, which have the national centers have more the objective of managing the funding and coordination, but the entity which will coordinate the communities from each country is another group called the Strategic Advisory Group. That's the task of the Strategic Advisory Group, to coordinate the local communities in each of the countries. Although it's a little bit twisted because we are now 27 countries and the Strategic Group will have 20 members. Whatever, nothing is perfect, but we can make it profitable. So now there are some hubs in Romania already on IT. There are some powerful hubs. We have a powerful hubs in Cluj. We have a very powerful club in Iași, also Bucharest. Slowly, I think also Timișoara is developing some very interesting projects. So, but they're a little bit scattered. We're trying now to cooperate, to make cooperation between them, and to shift a little bit, or not to shift, but to devolve also the cybersecurity part of it, because now they're very IT related, very programming related. We are exporting a lot of talent abroad, which is good and bad. Which is good because, yeah, especially now with the pandemic times, remote working had opened the gates to everywhere. They can work everywhere. On the other hand, it creates a gap on the local market for employment. If you're trying to find now experts on cybersecurity that they will be willing to work for a Romanian company, I can tell from my experience it's quite hard. And they are all working remotely or working on different time zones. And they are, as I said, good and bad things. Working on a different time zone, at some moment, there is also a shift in the human day-to-day activity, which can affect locally the economy. So there are advantages. But coming back to the subject of what we can bring to the world, I think we have some very talented minded on IT and especially on cybersecurity. It's well known also that somewhere in the 90s, end of 90s, let's say, we had plenty of very smart people on cybersecurity, but which were using their skills not in the benefit of the community, but against the community. That's why, for example, on the Eastern countries bloc of European Union, the first FBI bureau was established in Romania for a particular reason, US being one of the targets of a lot of forgeries, credit card fraud, and a lot of cybercrime initiatives from Romania towards especially clients from US. So we have skilled people. We have, I think, 14 universities, Gabriele, you can correct me here, which have master degrees programs or at least advanced training programs on cybersecurity. So we can bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. And I'm coming back again to the subject of the first element of cyber systems, the human. We have a lot of intelligence that can bring and shed some light on this aggressive phenomenon of fake news and information analytics.
I will come back to this high-skilled personal gap you've mentioned a little bit later. Thank you very much for sharing with us some insights regarding the Cybersecurity Center in Romania recently established. And taking from that, I would say that some state actors use cyberspace for espionage, undertake online influence campaigns, and disrupt critical infrastructure while attempting to erode confidence in national authorities and institutions and democratic processes. They pose significant threats against international security, national security, first of all, international security, and even global order, at least in my view. Furthermore, violent extremist organizations have used the internet to recruit terrorists, to raise funds, to direct violent attacks and disseminate gruesome propaganda. But on the other hand, many actors are keen to increasingly cooperate to mutually improve their innovativeness and grow their technological strength. There are many examples of initiatives, platforms, programs of cooperation within the Euro-Atlantic area, but not only. So my question to you, Mr. Stănescu, now, is cyberspace primary the realm of competition or cooperation?
That's a very good question. Cyberspace is like any innovative tool at its time, used for both. When we invented the knife, we were thinking that it's going to help us build some other tools or maybe help us cut our food. But in the end, it's being used also for criminal activities. The same with guns and so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, it's the realm of both, if we like it or not. We are trying through different regulations to filter out the two worlds, the two realms, and slowly I would say that as tools developed, or I would say as criminal activities developed, also the tools to detect them developed. Speaking now, I remember 1999, it was a total disaster in Romania for the authorities, because we had the analog telephony and everybody was using modem and dial-ups. And if they were trying to backtrace from where it happened, they were ranging in an area of a neighborhood. They couldn't go to pinpoint, they couldn't pinpoint on a smaller scale than a whole neighborhood from where it originated the attack. While if we're looking now, they know exactly from where you are. So, but it's both increased slowly, as unfortunately we can see that criminal activity always has the head start. And also it is very, very hard. Ross Ashby, famous mathematician, said that only variety can destroy variety. And that's very true, because we're going, and I'm coming also from a background of, let's say, enforcing policies and generating policies and trying to create some rules and laws for restricting and using this cyber realm as in a productive way and a secure way, but at the same time restricting and going procedural. SOP, standard operation procedure, is the thing which is good to have in an organization, but also if you do not have the flexibility to react very fast to new evolving threats, that's definitely going to kill the organization. So, and it's hard to find this balance between the two. You can always, you cannot have an organization without rules, but at the same time, you need to know when and how to allow full flexibility in order to prevent an attack which has full flexibility. The attackers are not working 9 to 5; they are working also during the night. So that's the reality. So I don't think in the future we will gonna see a reduction of one realm or of the other. I think that the gap will go deeper between the two, and they will really fight from one part to the other with better and better weapons, each better being from the objective of each one. So attackers will have better tools to attack, and defenders will always have better tools to defend. Unfortunately, we need to be aware that this flexibility of the attackers is opening a lot more opportunities for them than we need on the other side to protect. We're always trying to protect, and we're always trying to, first, I think it's a lack of awareness and of people to understand that, okay, it's simple for someone to understand that if he plays with fire, he will get burned because he can try it, he can touch it, he can feel it. If you're explaining that some virtual bit switch from 0 to 1 will damage his food, life, car, or whatever, it's hard for him to understand, to perceive that element. So that's why I think we are a little bit one step behind, but trying our best. We have AI now on our side, machine learning, hoping that we can learn some patterns a little bit faster.
So as you've mentioned, sound cybersecurity strategies and policies are key to provide, to basically prevent major cyber threats to occur. And after that, the proper tools and methodologies to deal with major cyber threats and risks. How can you describe the current cyber environment in terms of significant threats and even opportunities and major trends?
We are seeing more and more evolved way of attacking, and the threats that we are facing now, we couldn't even think, let's say, 2 years ago. And here is a generally speaking, nobody have provisioned such a, well, nobody. There are a few which said that they provisioned a pandemic, but not at this scale. So everywhere, I think we are, I would say, starting 2001 after September events, we went from one type of crisis to another type of crisis, which are threats to humanity, threats to the human being in different forms. Either we're speaking physical, hunger, medical issues now. So I think this became somehow the de facto way of going. Financial crisis, yeah, I forgot that one. It was, you see, we tend to forget. We go over and we tend to forget. And unfortunately, when we're forgetting some things, we tend to repeat them. I'm looking at still one of the major threats nowadays is phishing. Come on, phishing is on the threat arena for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And it's still working. We do not believe that this can happen to us, and we go prone to very easy type of threats. Okay, I'm not speaking, there are 0 days attacks. We have supply chain attacks, which now are, let's say, a new brand. We had SolarWinds and all the other that happened in the last year. And we are seeing new types of attacks. Supply chain attack was not a major thing 3, 4, or 5 years ago, but now it became somehow the de facto way of attacking really mature organization in terms of cybersecurity. But still, for the masses, and we're speaking in a lot of cases about the mass attacks, we're still prone to very simple types of attacks. We're still prone to password reusage. We're still prone to a password which are the name of the dog and the number of the car, or stuff like that. So I think the biggest threat still is literacy in terms of cybersecurity. There is a big lack of it. We have very, let's say, advanced attacks which happens, but those attacks are targeting in general people which are very advanced in terms of their skills. Okay, if you want to attack, I don't know, some big corporation from here. So if you want to attack Tesla, for example, let's take a well-known brand, you will need skilled people because they have skilled people. But when you're trying to attack mass clients of a bank or something like that, you don't need very skilled people. You just need skilled people in terms of profiling, skilled people in terms of human intelligence, to know what they like, to know what they trigger their attention, what are their common goals, what are their social beliefs, what are their cognitive biases, and then you can easily exploit them easily. And you exploit them with really dumb emails with grammatical errors in it and stuff like that. They just click on it. So I wouldn't say there are new threats coming, but still the old ones are good.
What is the contribution of social media to these dynamics you've just mentioned and the technologies behind them? I mean, the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on and so forth.
Social media. I have the feeling that social media is an intermediate step between what we knew as our world in the past and what we can hear speaking now of metaverse and some other completely virtual worlds. A few years ago, there was that game Second Life, and everybody was saying, yeah, who's playing that? Only people which they really get bored and introvert people and stuff like that. But in the end, we can see that slowly we're moving towards there. Slowly, social media definitely became a way of life. You have that screen time application on the phones. If you look on average, I think people have on social media at least 10-15% of their time on the phone is on social media. So of course, it's a very good pool of recruiting in masses, people, targets for whatever you want. We were speaking earlier about recruiting terrorists. Yeah, that can be one of the usage. You can speak on recruiting for phishing. You can do profiling very well based on social media, what the people like, what they're commenting upon, and all this. At the same time, we need to look also at the benefits of social media, which created new jobs like influencer. Who was speaking about influencing 10 years ago? They were just the artists, and that was all. So I really think that there is a shift now. We need to adapt, but we need to filter, to have some filters on what to adapt and how to adapt. And that's why I'm coming back again to literacy. We need, from I would say even primary school, to have a little bit of awareness of what social media is, what internet is, why you do not give all the details online, why in general, now, okay, everybody can decide for himself, but in social media, you put just what you want others to know about you, not necessarily what you are, but what you want others to know.
Mr. Adăstănescu, you've already several times mentioned the importance of collaboration and cooperation in the cyber world between various actors. Most of the time, the reaction speed and the collaboration capacity between the different actors with cybersecurity competencies, let's say like that, influence the quality and the efficiency of the cyber response. universities can contribute both through research and training in the field of cybersecurity. So, because our session today is hosted by a university, how do you see this collaboration? And especially, how do you think that the connection between cybersecurity aim and cyber defense on one side and academia on the other side will evolve in the future?
That's a very good question, and I will have. I'm feeling forced to avoid the silence term between me and Gabriel, which we decided to make it public in December. But here it's a good opportunity to avoid that silence. Sendline, our company that I built 14, 15 years ago, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Maritime University of Constanta in order to help give our knowledge towards the community of university in Constanta. And we try to figure out, I think every organization can provide some sort of knowledge or of advantage towards the community. In our case, it was a product which we developed, a risk management vulnerability-based product called Centralizer, which when I saw the program from the university regarding the risk management in cybersecurity, I said that's exactly, you need the tool on which to show exactly how to do that. So this is the basis of our partnership, and this is a good example of how a private entity can cooperate with the public institution or a university to give maybe some decide to give sponsorship, some other decide to give access to a program without the necessity of licensing, which sometimes for universities, especially in Romania, we know that, yeah, they don't have unlimited budget, they need maybe hardware, maybe they need software. So I think from the private sector, those needs can be fulfilled by different private actors. On the other hand, I think, for example, there can be also a reverse benefit, because you are educating people on what they really need to ask from other organizations. When I'm saying that, I remember 8-9 years ago, I started teaching cybersecurity trainings on private companies, because when going to the market with our offer of services, people tend to accept anything that was coming from the market. For example, we're having a very good experience on penetration testing, okay? And we're facing in our clients very cheap prices from other companies which were offering, in fact, vulnerability assessment sold as penetration testing. And we're saying, okay, but it's not the same thing. And they could not differentiate. So again, literacy in the client, or literacy in the people that will work on different clients, is very important. So like that, educating the people at university level, for example, to know what is risk management, to know what is cybersecurity, to know how to do and to ask different services is very, very important. So I really think that on this side, cooperation can go both ways. Also, you have people that are skilled and they come back to the market with some very high skilled. And also, university can benefit from the necessary assets and software. This is what I've heard mostly. We need software, we need hardware, we need knowledge, we need places for internships for the students. That's also a very important thing, because it's a very good thing what happens in university. But then they need also to face the actual market, the actual threats that are happening in a company at that moment. And that's a very good two-way partnership from my point of view. And there are several in Romania, and I'm really happy that I'm seeing this more and more. And I really hope that with the start of the European Center, we're gonna help better develop this community between private sector and universities, which is one of the very important steps.
So we have learned from you today that it is not enough to have high-skilled personnel, but the performance of the entire cybersecurity sector depends very much on the quality of tools, methodologies, and technology they use. And we know that you are a provider of such advanced technology in cybersecurity management. You've already mentioned your technology, Centralizer. And now I would invite you to provide more details about this technology. Can you describe in more details your solution, its main functions, and the differentiator compared with other similar solution in, I think, I can presume, in a very competitive market where you are present?
Okay, I'm going to try to keep it as non-commercial as possible. Let me see if I can.
Yes.
Great. All right. I will go over this presentation. So basically, we discovered 6 years ago that there was a small niche on the market where companies that really wanted to take vulnerability management as a process and not just as a requirement point in time when, yeah, there were different regulations which required you to do a penetration test or a vulnerability assessment. You are doing that, checked, nothing happens afterwards. Or maybe they were going for the really red findings there, and that was everything. So we discovered this need of transforming a one-time process, so a document which reflected the report of that contest, into something of a process, something which goes on and on and on, and which improves the maturity of a company in terms of cybersecurity. So looking back then on the market, we found that there were almost no products at that time. I'm speaking about 2014 when we observed this need, and that's the moment when we started this product. Now, of course, now on the market there are several products similar. Although, if we're looking compared to other cybersecurity products, there are not that many on each sector. So in this field of risk-based vulnerability management, probably we can name around 5 products. The need of such thing is very visible in the latest ENISA report on NIS investment, where we see that vulnerability management solutions are the first chapter of investment in order to be compliant with the NIS directive, because the NIS directive requires vulnerability management. So we can see in the last report that 23% of the investments done in cybersecurity in the last year were towards this subject. So yeah, somehow we provisioned what will happen in 6 years from then. Now, in terms of what is the main differentiator from, I will go to the last line and come back afterwards. The main differentiator of Centralizer compared to other on the market, and I'm very glad that I'm speaking this in a Maritime conference, is that we can operate in isolated environments. We are currently the only product on the market that can operate completely in isolated environments, although we're going against the flow of cloud and everything. We are also present in the cloud, but we consider that critical infrastructure is the main element that needs to be protected now. And speaking about critical infrastructure, in most cases, we're not speaking about connected environments. We're not speaking about cloud, definitely. So we need a tool for those isolated environments to be able to do their management process of the vulnerabilities. Now, in terms of the process, again, we have something that differentiates us from our competitors. Most of the operational flow is quite similar. You discover the vulnerability. Maybe you have some processing rules, like for emails on Outlook, you do this with this email, we do this with this email. But then you have correlation and the duplication. This also, there might be other products having it. What they do not have is, again, we're coming back to Stefano Dobleja, because we're Romanians and we like to take the history help us. So there is an idea of transferring the risk. What happens with the vulnerability from the moment you discover it? Well, before you discover it, sorry. Until you discover it, it's the duty of the security team to discover vulnerabilities, okay? Then their duty is to notify the responsible person of fixing that vulnerabilities. Still, up till that point, it's still on the cybersecurity team responsibility. But if the owner do not acknowledge, which means accept the vulnerability, okay, I know about the vulnerability, it is mine. You cannot say as a team of cybersecurity that you did your job, even though you discovered the vulnerability. Unless the owner, the responsible person, is not acknowledging it, it means that he can always say, you did not tell me, I did not know. So it's a matter of transferring the responsibility from the security team to the person in charge of fixing it. And then, okay, you have also the solving part. So we separated the process into these main activities. And what happens is very interesting, is that once you have a written policy that says, look, you have this SLA for acknowledging this kind of finding, which is on a critical asset, you have this time of acknowledging a finding which is on a lower critical asset, you are decreasing very fast the time to fix of the vulnerabilities. This is we went on a very psychological point of view on how to solve faster the vulnerabilities, and we really think that we found the way. So these are, let's say, the main two elements that really differentiate us from everybody on the market. We have a very flexible product that integrates, I would say, all of the vulnerability scanner on the markets for networking, infrastructure, and a web application. And we try to go even on very isolated environments. We released last month also, let's say, a little bit lighter version of the product that can run even on a Raspberry Pi, which for very narrow market, it's also interesting. Now, going back a little bit to less product oriented, but to the idea behind. When you're doing vulnerability management, it's something very technical, but the risk of an organization are not only technical. You don't need to evaluate them only technically. So that's why when we're evaluating the risk, we're taking into consideration several aspects, including the business context of that asset. Where on the business continuity plan is that asset located? How important is the process sustained by that asset for the company? So we're taking this into consideration for prioritization. Also, it's very important to know on which network and how important is that network for the company we have it. For example, for a bank, definitely the internet banking is one of the most important networks. So let's say the external DMZ or DMZ, how you want to call it, internet facing. But at the same time, if we're speaking about probably now Pfizer or Moderna, I'm pretty sure that their lab is a lot more important for them than what's on the public website. So the needs of companies are different. And here I think that our competitors have a lack of vision, because they say, no, what's on the internet is the most important. We tend to say, no, each company has his needs. We need to customize the product, and we need to allow the client to to customize his own prioritization task on each case. So the next element which I want to point, and that's my last one, if you have any other question, or if Mr. Sagi also arrived, I will be happy to listen to him, is that when we're speaking about risk-based vulnerability management, we need to take into consideration all the aspects. We need to take looking into the databases, network equipment, servers, application, source code, and to not forget also the input that you can give for the human that operate all those. There is in the back of this tool, there is also an AI algorithm which, based on the activities of the users responsible of fixing the vulnerabilities, we can provision future risk on a higher rate or on a lower rate, being prioritized based on how effective are those owners of fixing their duty. So it's a holistic tool that we're trying to cover everything from operational risk into technical terms of prioritization.
I would like to ask the moderator, Dr. Nicu Iancu, to retake the helm of our meeting and to invite Mr. Amir Sagli to address his presentation and his words to us. Thank you.
So I'm back again. Thank you very much, Professor Raicu. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Radu Stănescu for his really great contribution to this session today. They do a really great work at Sendline and anything. And thank you very much, Mr. Stănescu, for everything, for all your thoughts, everything you've shared with us today. And now, please allow me to welcome Mr. Amir Sagi. Thank you very much for joining this event and looking at your impressive experience in security and diplomacy. I'm confident that our distinguished audience has a really great opportunity to get some insights into cybersecurity policy and strategy and cybersecurity issues at large. Mr. Sagi, I've started today's session by setting the scene. So I'm gonna repeat a little bit my first thoughts, mentioning that from a very broad perspective, we can notice that state and not-state actors are growing more sophisticated and accomplishing advancements in policy, education, and technologies in cyberspace. In this context, when states may have implicit access to companies' data, and where the existence of a highly capable private sector actors focused on cybersecurity can benefit states, mainly since private and public sectors often use the same technologies. My first question would be, do you think that the private and public sectors can effectively act together in cyberspace to deal with major security threats and challenges there?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to attend and to join you. Yes, I would maybe dedicate a few minutes to explain a little bit about the Israeli ecosystem, the cyber security ecosystem, which in some ways is unique, but it's definitely contributing to the posture, the Israeli cybersecurity posture, and our capabilities, and it's heavily based on a great, I would say, cooperation and the collaboration between the different parts of the ecosystem. So it's not a secret, but in Israel we are benefiting the fact that the military is obligatory, and all young Israelis, men and women, are obliged to enroll into the military. And that said, the idea of the Israeli military has the benefit of choosing and picking the brightest and the best out of all those enrolled into the military, and they choose the ones that are more capable to be trained and to be working on cyber defense. And they're getting the best training, the best equipment, and they are facing the real issues in a very young age. And later on, most of them go out to after they fulfill their service to either to the academy to continue their studies, or to the industry. And having said that, we are very blessed to have people, very young people with a lot of expertise, a lot of know-how that they have accumulated in the military service, going into both. And therefore we have the Israeli ecosystem is flourished basically by those two elements, the private sector and the academic sector. And the government in this ecosystem has two main jobs. First, not to interfere, not to try to overregulate, and not to put bureaucratic burdens. And the second and most important part is to try to fill the gaps, to fill the needs, the places where the ecosystem is not fully sufficient. I would maybe touch upon two or three examples. One of them is how the government has allocated resources to the academic sector to open in all Israeli major universities and colleges cyber studies and R&D. Each university, each college, of course, has the prerogative to decide which fields and what kind of cyber research or training they would like to do. But there was resources and direction allocated from the central government to all of them to invest in these fields. And today we are very lucky to say that most of our, I would say all our major universities and especially the technological colleges, they have very, very elaborated research centers, very robust training, and they teach and they train a lot of personnel that later on goes to the private sector. Another important thing is how the government, including the ministry, both the Ministry of Education and our Ministry of Defense, are trying to start programs in the periphery, including in major high schools in the periphery areas of Israel, both geographically and socially. So they will encourage and have capabilities in major high schools to have very extensive STEM programs. Those programs are for kids later on to be able to join into the, whether it's in the military or later on when they go into the academic life, to be able to study technological studies, STEM and other relevant subjects that are very crucial for people when they study cyber, get their cyber training. So the government as well is trying to enhance the ecosystem by our branch, the government branch for innovation. We have an innovation authority. They have extensive programs for startups, for accelerators within the cyber domain. And all this is how the government is supporting the ecosystem. But in the major, I would say, factor here is that we have a very thriving ecosystem that builds itself. So the fact that in a way Israel is a small country helps as well. Those circles of people that have met each other, whether in the military service or in the academic life, later on, they get into very close contacts once they're in the industry. Today, the Israeli cyber industry is over 600 companies, big, small, medium, startups, a very thriving ecosystem of cyber defense industries. And they are today, the Israeli industry, the cyber industry is attracting about over 40% of global investment in cyber, which is quite unique to see a small country like Israel attracting so much investment. So I would say definitely the government sees itself as an enabler and trying not to stop or put any burdens, and to make sure that this ecosystem is thriving and flourishing.
So thank you very much for sharing these first thoughts on your very, very sound approach in cybersecurity. We already know that Israel has become one of the world leaders in cybersecurity. And you've already mentioned that such a unique position has required an interdisciplinary approach, not limited to technology, not limited to education, but also to the other key aspects of a comprehensive national cybersecurity strategy. You've already mentioned several circles you provide within your cybersecurity ecosystem. And as you have mentioned, only if you take the whole ecosystem, you can come out with something that enables you to compete in the cyber world. My question in this context, Mr. Sagi, is what are the building blocks of your cybersecurity strategies together with education and technology? And what are the major cyber threats your strategy states?
Okay, thanks for the question. I would say that it's true, because we were very early, about 20 years ago already. The government has decided to look into this topic and to build a comprehensive national level strategy. A group of experts were given the task by the government. They proposed, after a very extensive research work, to build or to establish a civilian national cyber directorate that would be different from the security apparatuses, the security or the military apparatus that we had before. Something that would be on a national level, directly under the Prime Minister's office. So it means that our national cyber directorate has no government ministry in charge of them, but they are directly oversight by the Prime Minister himself. They report to the Prime Minister, and that gave them the clout, and they're in a way above the other ministries in their responsibilities over the government as a regulator for the government on cyber. But it's more, it gave them the power also and the authority to address the private sector, because this is mainly the most problematic thing. How the government can direct or assist the private sector when it comes to its cyber defense. We don't have yet the legislation ready to give the government any enforcement powers, or they won't be able to force it, but they're operating from the other side. They're trying to enable and to give the private sector the information, give them all the best practices. They publish a lot of information. They go out and publish books of regulations and things that they believe that should be in all levels of the private sector, whether it's a small entity or a big company. And they, of course, are there to assist. One of the things they have done, which is another unique thing that the Israeli National Cybersecurity Agency has opened a hotline, which is very similar to any other security or assistant hotline. It's 24/7. Every citizen or company or any entity, anyone can call anytime, report any cyber issues that he might have or tackle, and get assistance, immediate assistance, and later on also long-term assistance. And this is also in a way how to build the trust with the citizens and with the public sector, with the public and private sector. So it's built a lot. Our strategy is built mostly on building two major layers. One is the layer of awareness. The more you explain, both to the man on the street, but also to the company CEOs, what are the threats? How to make a good risk assessment? How to invest in what should be invested in cyber defense, including for the people themselves, how to protect their own private computers and their cell phones and so forth. And so awareness is of course, going out on awareness campaigns on all levels, whether it's through the schools, but through mass media and so on. And another layer, which is not less important, is the resilience, because it's inevitable that somebody or some company or someone will be attacked. The question is how fast this company, this entity, would be able to return to business as normal, or as close to normal as possible. So resilience is all about building your capacity to defend yourself, but also recovering. So they're working a lot on recovery plans. Once bad things happen, you have to mitigate them. But the most important is how to make sure that the market itself, or the company, or the sector is immediately back on business. So that's the two main focal, I would say, layers that they're working on. And in addition, of course, how to nourish the ecosystem, how to look at the long term, to see the trends, try to come with solutions before things happen, and so on. As for the threats, I think that today we are, as most of the developed world is facing, the economies are facing. We are in the same boat. On the same boat, we are seeing, from the one hand, a huge increase in the amount of attacks. Ransomware has become a menace all over the world, including in Israel. We've seen lately a few cases, very severe cases of ransomware in very sensitive sectors, like a hospital in Israel, a regional hospital that has been attacked and crippled, I would say. They had to go back to work on paper for a few weeks. Their computer systems were all down. We had few companies, financial companies attacked, and of course the accumulative cost or the damage, the economic damage of ransomware is accumulating, and we are getting more and more reports of companies, although there must be also a lot of people that have been attacked and they don't report, they just pay. Small businesses, private people. We are sure that there is also an amount of unregistered attacks. That's on the one hand, and so cybercrime is on the rise, as we see it all around the world, because of the COVID, because of the more dependency on online shopping and online studying and online working and so on and so forth, and the fact that people are bringing their own devices to their companies today or to the office. And of course, the attack surface is huge today, bigger than before. So that's on the one hand. On the same time, Israel is getting attacks from, as you mentioned, non-state actors. We see attacks from terrorist groups or groups affiliated to terrorist groups. We see attacks by states that are backing terrorist attack groups or backing hacking groups that are doing both economic attacks or ransomware, but also attacks that have definitely a political target, whether it's influencing the public opinion or influencing the confidence of people in the systems. So we see influential campaigns aside the campaigns that are either to create just damage or prove that they have the capacity of creating damage. And of course, the classical economic attacks with economic target objective behind them. So we see the whole spectrum, and we are definitely seeing a huge rise in the last year and a half or 2 years.
So we've understood that this all-nation integrated effort, standing on comprehensive methods and integrated capabilities, it's a very functional approach, maybe the best one. And you've succeeded to bring together the private sector and public organizations to deal with these versatile, malign actions in cyberspace. We try to do the same here in Romania, Mr. Sagi. Romania is already present on the international cybersecurity map with many contributions, initiatives, and developments. We've already discussed in the first part of this session today that there are many reasons to believe that our country has become a significant source of expertise and talent in cybersecurity. For instance, as you already know, this year, the Bucharest-based Cybersecurity Competence Center got the green light from the European Council. This center will bring together the main European actors, the main European stakeholders, including the industry, academic and research organizations, and even civil society, going to the education, to the cybersecurity culture, and all of this to build a cybersecurity community and to enhance and spread cybersecurity expertise, not only across the EU, but also abroad. How do you see these accomplishments from Israel? How do you see Romania's presence in the cybersecurity world?
First of all, we have followed very closely the EU tender, and we were very pleased and very, very happy to see that Bucharest was chosen to be the center. We definitely congratulate the government and Romania for achieving this. We believe that this is really going to be a game changer, both for Romania and for the EU. Today, it's all about how to bring, as you said, the multi-stakeholders into one place to enhance the innovation and trying to get all this together in order to achieve the goal, which is getting much more complicated of having a very robust cyber defense for the whole nation and for the whole EU. We would very much like to be able to build on the very, very close relations that we have between Israel and Romania, political, cultural, economic relations that go many, many years now, and including in cyber. We've been very much into looking into the ways we can cooperate. We had a visit a few months ago of our president to Romania, and one of the issues that came on the agenda, high on the agenda, was cooperation in cyber defense between Israel and Romania. And we look at this new center as an opportunity for Israeli innovation, Israeli academics, Israeli research to come and work hand in hand with Europeans and Romanians in this new center, and we would really much like to see how we can build more, because we have a lot of very good bilateral relations with many of the European Union members, including, of course, Romania, as I mentioned. But on the European level, on the EU level, we don't have that much. So we really think that the Bucharest Center would be an enabler to bring Israeli know-how, technology, innovation more into Europe. Same as we do on other projects that Israel is very much involved, like the Horizon project, that program that Israel has been participating for many years, and a lot of basic research, chemistry, biology, and other sciences has been coming out of this very, very good European programs. And we would like to see the same happening also in the cyber domain. We believe that it's possible. Israeli companies are definitely ready to come and see how they can cooperate together. I'm sure that the major universities in Israel will be extremely interested to open programs and see how they can send their researchers to do joint research and to fund joint projects. So it's for us, it's a very, very positive development, and we look forward to see how we can use it together to make the world a better place.
When you are referring to this very good opportunity for further cooperation between Romanian and Israeli entities in the cybersecurity field, do you think also to some specific projects, I mean to some specific technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on and so forth? So, yeah.
Say that there are few subjects that today we see a growing number of Israeli companies dealing with. I think that one of the major developments we've seen in the last year is cloud computing. Israeli companies, we had even 2 or 3 unicorns that were built just the last year and a half in this field of cloud computing. We believe this is the way the world is moving, and there's much more need today for cloud computing, cyber defense technology. So there's one field. AI is growing also exponentially here in Israel, both on the R&D level and also in the universities, but also in the industry itself. Israel is also now in the process, the government is in a process of doing the same thing as we did before on the cyber domain, to do it on the AI. So there's a coordination, intergovernmental coordination, putting in for the new government in Israel to putting a national strategy for AI. Part of it is also, we've lately been joining some of the best, I would say, on the world level organizations or groups. So we've been joining GPI, which is under the OECD. So Israel would like very much to be part of the ongoing thought among academics and government people and of course industry people on how AI should be developed in all levels, regulatory, ethical, of course, technological. So I think that AI is going to be high on the agenda as well. 5G is something we're also very much looking into. It's on the top priority right now. Israeli companies are looking into Open RAN and other related technologies of 5G. We definitely believe it should be a joint international effort to build better environments for 5G, to have much more vendors on the vendor list, and to have better solutions, more secure solutions. In the long term, which we also look at other emerging technologies. It can be quantum computing. I think that we're going forward in some of those fields under quantum computing, but it's still in more embryonic stage, also when it comes to the industry. Sorry. And also on the classical cybersecurity, I think that Israeli companies and Israeli methodology on the training and human capital capacity building is very much developed. We believe that our methodology and our training strategies are very successful, although there's also a gap, I would say, in the numbers of trained personnel in the cyber defense in Israel too, but it's a world phenomena. So a lot of effort should be put on better methodology and technology, how to train and to have a better training facilities and systems for cyber defenders. There are very good Israeli companies doing cyber simulation, cyber training facilities, and so on. So these are the topics I think that we should concentrate on.
Thank you very much for sharing with us some major objectives you are focusing on right now. You've mentioned several initiatives, intergovernmental initiatives, and also your outstanding work with the private sector in getting much more relevant outcomes at the end of these processes. It is why I would ask you if you could share with us some thoughts about your approach in sharing the responsibility for implementing such initiatives between the public and private sector. I mean, the founding of such kind of projects, how do they share the responsibility for budgets, and after that, for the implementing specific objectives?
Well, I think that here we have been doing a lot. What is still, I would say, missing in our system is the appropriate legislation. Many countries I know that have already gone through legislating what is called cyber laws or similar provisions that allow the government to have any kind of enforcement powers over the private sector, because we've seen that the lack of sufficient defense by the utility companies or any other companies is extremely costly for the whole country. Just to give you one example, of course, which comes in mind is Colonial Pipeline. And the consequences of what happened in Colonial Pipeline are seen today all over the world. People didn't imagine that something like that could happen. So I'm sure that today the need for the legislation, the legal framework that will allow the government to be more robust, because it's nice to tell the private sector what it should do, but sometimes you need the teeth, you need the power to be able to enforce it. And we don't have that right now in Israel. This is something that we've seen in need. There are a few drafts on the table of our parliament to consider. It's a long process. There are also, of course, some lobbying from the people that are advocating what about privacy, what about keeping IP, how the government can definitely be going into the public sector without any control. Of course, there'll be a judicial and other controls. It's not going to be something that any official can or any bureaucrat can decide without getting the legal power from the courts. But there's a need for that. We had one case last year of an Israeli small insurance company that was attacked by a ransom attack. And this company, although it wasn't one of the major financial companies, but it had all the government employees, private vehicles insured. So they had access to a lot of data, private data of government officials, including very high-ranking officials. So there must be a kind of enforcement power of the government to make sure that data is properly stored, properly encrypted, protected. And it's not always enough to say or to suggest. You sometimes, as a government, you need also the enforcement power. It has to be, of course, very balanced. It has to be very controlled. checks and balances are also very important. But this legislation is right now on the table of our parliament. It's going probably to be discussed in the next few months, and hopefully, once it's done, we will be able to have also the Israeli National Cybersecurity not only as a regulator for the government, but also in some capacities also regulator with enforcement powers over the private sector.
So, Mr. Sagi, you've already mentioned several areas of common interest you should further explore. I mean, our two countries, Israel and Romania, for future cooperations in this field of cybersecurity. I would go a little bit further now, asking you about the particular case of academic cooperation between the two parts. As our session today is hosted by a university, Maritime University in Constanta, how do you see this collaboration in the academic and in the academic field and research will evolve between our countries?
Definitely, I think that one of the things we're encouraging is our universities to go out and to explore and find to find partners around the world to sign with MOUs and joint research and exchanges of students, exchanges of faculty. These are things that we constantly encourage whenever there's an opportunity on there that comes to our mind. We immediately, of course, have the ways to inform our universities. We are in touch with the major cyber departments and relevant departments at our major academic institutions, and we can always be a facilitator. That's something we see ourselves as doing as diplomats. So first of all, I would really much suggest doing it through our embassy in Bucharest and getting them involved. They will be able to find few partners, relevant partners in Israel, and to do the matching. We, of course, we can be facilitators. We cannot do more than that. The government is, as I said, in Israel, they're investing money within the academic institutions for research. So there's an opportunity there for that, for Israeli universities to join government funded research. So maybe joint ventures can enjoy this as well. It's interesting because on the, you mentioned the Maritime University. So we have also, as the government started to think about the maritime domain and cybersecurity. This is something that has maybe for many years has not been so much in the center, but right now we definitely believe that, especially in this year and a half, that we see all the issues with supply chain, with naval, like maritime transportation problems, and so on and so forth, and especially when we figured out that. The maritime domain has been neglected for many years, especially the vessels themselves are not well protected. Just to imagine if we've seen what happened with that ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal for navigation problems, but you can never know what damage can be caused for one or two ships to be taken over with a cyber attack. And being stuck in the Suez Canal, the economic damage is enormous. So definitely there must be some research done in how to better protect vessels today. We are also following very closely some of the problems that we've seen in the Mediterranean. For instance, there's some GPS obstruction. So there are parts that we've seen some vessels complaining about loss of GPS signals and so on. So there must be a joint here. First of all, research, but also later on, work between. It can be shipping companies, it can be universities trying to find better ways to protect navigation and naval and maritime technologies over vessels, but also in ports. The whole thing of supply chain is something that everybody's looking into now, how to have better protection of OT systems that are the bread and butter of ports and logistic supply. So all these issues are now highly on our agenda. I know that some of our ports, maybe the port of Ashdod, is also allocating now resources for research. So there's an opening now to join. So academic institutions can join some of the major players in the maritime domain to start doing research together, and later on maybe finding solutions for some of the issues.
I'm sure that our hosts from the Maritime University in Constanta have been taking notes from your from the topics you've introduced today about this specific area of cybersecurity. And because we are approaching the end of today's session, Mr. Sagi, you've underlined the key features of cyber world. What I can say, it is turbulent and unpredictable world, and in the current environment in which cyber attacks aren't the exception but the norm, and in this increasing spectrum of cyber threats, this is the prologue for an unavoidable catastrophic destiny of our society. So how can we prevent such a destiny? Can we improve our capability to deal with such a huge challenge that the cyber world brings in our lives nowadays?
I think that we have to look at it as a joint task. This is no country, big or important and developed as it can be, can tackle this by itself. Even superpowers we've seen are in need for cooperation. So definitely this is a joint effort. The more we will be able to have programs and projects that would be joint ventures between different countries, different economies, we'll have a better solution. The advantages of a developed world is, it's interconnectability, the flow and everything, and the technology, but that's also the attack surfaces. So the more we have technology, the more we have connectivity, we'll have more, we just open more opportunities for our adversaries, for those who are trying to do malicious things on the cyber domain. So the key here is sharing information, because one time I will be attacked, but if I share with you what happened to me, immediately you can prepare yourself when it happens to you. So sharing information is number one, sharing experiences, best practices. We are trying to do it on a bilateral level with many countries, building those operational cooperation that we can share threat analysis, we can share best practices, we can share information, forensic information about attacks that occurred and so on, to better prepare ourselves for the future. And it's all about a joint solution. The more we'll be working together here, it will be much more difficult for those who try to benefit from our technology and do malicious things or cybercrime or whatever.
Mr. Amur Sagi, understanding that cybersecurity is primarily the ground of cooperation and not of competition, I want to thank you very much for your outstanding contribution to today's session. Thank you very much for sharing with us some thoughts about Israeli cybersecurity strategy and policies, about the different approaches you implement within the cybersecurity field, and the great contribution you bring to the cybersecurity at large. Thank you very much for being with us today. And now I'm gonna give the floor to Professor Wright. Thank you very much, Mr. Sagi.
Thank you very much. Indeed, it was a very interesting event today, a very interesting conference. In fact, we have plenty showreel of portfolio of cybersecurity technologies and policies. Interesting topics were addressed in the direction of cybersecurity communities and dual-use technologies, or misinformation or disinformation, and combating it from the cybersecurity perspective. The status of activities and economic developments were also reviewed both nationally and internationally. Cybersecurity is a difficult subject that needs to be addressed in a complex way, given the continuous evolution of threats and their nature. There are a multitude of advanced means for studying the methods of counteracting security risk in the maritime industry, especially classical technical risk. Beyond well-known risk, there is a possibility of increasing or transforming them into triggers of accidents and catastrophes by contextual manipulation of command and control tools through cyber intrusions. Today, maritime systems become more dependent on digital technologies, which face higher risk and vulnerabilities, and we are all exposed to increasing cyber threats. Most equipments were designed when there were no cyber attacks, and as a result, the protection installed later do not completely address cybersecurity issues as a whole. As a direct consequence, not all industrial system assets can be protected accordingly. I want to remind you about Cybersecurity Technology Gallery launched today. You can see the link in the background of my image again. We invite all providers of technology and cybersecurity services to contribute here with technology presentations, with technology portfolios that can be used by academia to specialize and train students with the best technologies for a good and foreseeable future. We invite you also actively participate in the next events in December and also next year. I want to thank you once again for participating and invite you to be as careful as possible with cybersecurity threats and risks. Until the next online session, I wish you a good and cyber-secured day. Thank you again, and I will transfer the stage to Mr. Tal Pavel to address some of these thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Raicu. First of all, I would like to thank all the participants, everyone that joined us today for this very interesting event that, as Professor Raicu just mentioned, is only the first in we do expect a long series of cyber-related events with a focus on the maritime sector security and cybersecurity as well, both of them on maritime sector. So first of all, thank you everyone who attended, and we would like to see you in our next events. Of course, thank you so much for our moderator, Mr. Nicolae Iancu. It was a very, very impressive and professional. Thank you so much, as well as to our speaker, Mr. Amir Saghi and Mr. Radu Stănescu. I must say that this event was enriching and enlightening, and I must admit that I learned a lot from the questions of Mr. Iancu and the answers of Mr. Saghi and Mr. Radu Stănescu. It emphasized the importance of cyberspace, that it's relevant and may affect every one of us, and the needs to exchange knowledge and to share our experience, either from different perspective, industries and even nation states, as demonstrated here today, whether we are from the IT or the OT industries, or from governmental apparatus and organizations. I do hope that this and the forthcoming events in this series will bring benefits and will be fruitful to all of you, and to see you in our next events of security and cybersecurity in the maritime sector. Thank you once again for all of you, and stay safe and healthy, and see you in our next event. Thank you, everyone.